Alright, we are back with another episode of the Millennial Entrepreneurial Podcast. Having started my own business while studying at university and getting funding from O2, I love following the journeys of other young entrepreneurs. In the conversation today, I spoke to Henry Purchase about his journey into starting his own business, coming from being a semi-pro rugby player, and how he also spent time in Bali running his own business remotely, with how others can get involved in this as well. Stay tuned also for me telling a funny story about how another founder I know whose business was recently acquired for millions gained early investment in the most unlikely of places. As always, if you did enjoy this episode, please be sure to leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, and be sure to follow us on our new Instagram page. That's where all the new episode announcements are published, and yeah, it'd be really good to get people involved. Right, let's go on with the episode. Hey Henry, how are you?
Hi Zena, yeah, I'm not too bad, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, good, thanks. Really good to have you on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, man. Really appreciate it.
So how's kind of the whole isolation period treating you?
To be honest, mate, unfortunately, as an engineering student, it's not too far from university. Normally, I'm just knocking away at my dissertation and coursework and exams start and a week tomorrow. So just carrying on going.
It must be difficult for, managing your own business as well while this is all kind of going on, as well as, university exams.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a challenge, particularly because one of the girls we work with lives in Hong Kong, so she's gone back home, and you got the time difference that you have to deal with. So we have to have calls quite early in the morning. But in terms of the rest of the team, they're all always available to have a chat with. So yes and no, you just deal with it as if you would with anything else. We've got Zoom, which works really well. So,
but you've got like some team in like New York as well, don't you? So you're going to be up in the morning, and then up late at night as well for the calls in the US.
Yeah, fortunately, I don't deal with him too much. That's my co-founder Zach, which he knows him from when he was working in New York. So he's the one that has to deal with those late nights.
Oh, okay, that's lucky for you then. So why don't you
Yeah.
kind of like explain what Connex events actually is before we kind of like keep blabbering on?
Sweet. So Connex events essentially connect students to industry leading conferences and events. So the idea sort of stemmed from about a year ago when my co-founder Zach, he was on placement at Bank of New York in Canary Wharf, and he used his contacts there in order to get into essentially a world energy conference. Tickets were £3,000, and he managed to get in for free. And he spoke to a fellow student at University of Bath, and they said how cool it would be for students to be able to get into these conferences, because I'm sure you know, and all your listeners know, people that have got internships and placements through people their family know, or they've got really cool stuff on their CV. So to
Yeah,
get to
God,
the go to,
so many.
yeah, it's crazy. So to go to something like that where you can add it on your CV, you can meet people from big companies, was really invaluable for him. So sort of taking that on, we've now set up a platform where students can do exactly what he and I got to do, and go to some really cool conferences.
Oh, that's pretty cool. So a student could, instead of paying full price for these tickets, which can cost like, I saw one of these events, they cost like £3,000. It was crazy. And instead of that, they can volunteer through your service and they can just go there for free.
Yeah, so we have three ticket options. So we have a heavily discounted ticket. We tried to get them sort of 90% off. It depends on the total price. Um, and then we have a volunteering ticket where you'll volunteer for half the event and then get to go to the other half for free, or just a completely free ticket. So it varies depending on what the conference wants to give us. But either way, a student's getting a pretty cool deal out the back of it.
Oh, cool. So what sort of companies are you working with at the moment?
So the ones that we've got on there, we've had, as you mentioned, the one in New York, that was an InsurTech one. But then we also had a really cool conference. I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but there was Spotify, SoundCloud, and a number of radio companies that were over there based in New York. And then in the UK, we had a couple of leadership ones that were really interesting. And then we've actually got at the moment the energy conference that Zach got to go to. So that's WECA. It's the largest gathering of oil and gas CEOs in the world. So in terms of companies that they've got going there, Shell, KPMG, and Exxon are the main sponsors. So if you're say a mechanical engineering student that wants to go into oil and gas industry, to get a free ticket to go to that, that could really be the difference between your dream job or not in terms of your CV and the
Yeah,
contacts
yeah.
that you could make.
Also, the networking aspect of it, is it has it happened before where people go to these events, students go to these events and to get like a internship or a job off the back of it?
It's quite rare that they get one directly off the back of it, but what usually happens is they apply to a company and they'll drop that person an email, say, look, I've applied for a job, and usually it helps when it gets to interview stage, because I'm sure a lot of your listeners and yourself have been in interviews where kind of they will always ask you, so why do you want to work here? And I think that story can be really authentic. Well, I met Joe Bloggs from sales. I spoke to him about the unique culture at the company, and that's
Yeah,
led me here
definitely.
today. It sort of gives you that extra edge, I believe. So whilst we haven't had people that have directly got jobs, I certainly believe it's contributed.
Where do you kind of see like the future of Connex events? Because like I know so well the power of networking and how I think underrated it is. So for something like these events where you've got direct exposure to, the CEO of an oil company, if you want to work in that sort of space, it could be so powerful for you to, just find out more about the company, but also, see what sort of qualities that they're looking for, and yeah, just kind of making contacts with those sort of people, because I have so many friends that have got internships and grad jobs just from knowing the right people. And although it does seem a bit unfair, it is the way the world works. So it is very, I think it's something that a lot of people need to realize, and it's something that your business tackles very well, I think.
Yeah, I completely agree, and it's quite a common saying. It's who you know, not what you know, and that is unfortunate. But I think if you want to get to your long-term goals, you have to sort of realize the problems with life. And as you said, that there are some people that are getting amazing jobs and opportunities because of who they know, and hopefully, one positive thing that comes out of the horrible situation we're in with COVID at the moment, that more people realize that. I know people have had internships and sometimes even grad jobs cancelled because of what's happened. So the power of building your network and sort of strengthening your roots across different industries is it's really powerful, and we want to kind of capitalize that, not taking advantage of students,
Yeah.
but actually providing them with help and providing with opportunities with with them opportunities off the back of it. So, that's a long term aspiration. And how we're going to achieve that in the short term is we're creating a network of student ambassadors. We're focusing them primarily in London because that's where most of our events are. That doesn't mean that it's just going to be London. We can still send a University of Bristol Bath student to the event, but in terms of building a network of students closest to where our events are, that's sort of our short term aspiration. And then sort of building up the community side of the website that we've got. We don't just want people to go to an event and then some add it on the CV and not make anything of it. We want to really support them and provide them with mentoring and learning opportunities off the back of it. So that's what we're doing for our blog, and we're encouraging students to do Q&As on the site and that sort of thing. So that's sort of what we're focusing on in the short term. And then the long term, when things come back to normal after Corona, and hopefully the events are starting to be in person rather than online, then we can push that side even more.
Yeah, definitely. I actually remembered quite a funny story of like how powerful networking is. I actually know um, a CEO of a company that I worked for as a work experience when I was like 16, and they actually found like investment for their company. So their company was like a few days away from being like just running out of money, basically running out of the runway. They had to let something like 20 employees go. They couldn't find any more investment, and they actually found investment with like a co-member of a gym. So they would go to like the co-founder would go to a gym, and one of the people he bumped into in changing rooms actually offered him investment on the spot, right
Really?
there in the changing rooms. And he makes a joke about it. He's like, "Yeah, we're in the showers together, fully naked, and he just offered us 50 grand."
Oh,
So yeah, the whole networking thing, it's so powerful because people do just give jobs to people that they trust, and if they're more likely to trust you if they know you, and they're more like, yeah, they'll know you if you go to these sort of events.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a similar story. It wasn't off the back of an event, but I met someone that got an investment banking and internship in New York. So he's from the UK, and that was from caddying someone. Um, so it happens all the time where people can get these opportunities and get into companies almost through the back door. And this is sort of what we're hoping to provide alongside the learning, because as you said, you could be at a talk from a CEO at a really huge company, make a contact there, but then also have that extra thing. You could go to a finance conference and there could be a really cool talk about an emerging market. You can meet someone from Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, and that almost gives you that extra ammo for when you're writing your CV, from when you're going into the interview at these really big companies where, as we know, the competition is already so high as it is.
And your story is kind of interesting because you study engineering at university, and it's kind of, I mean, we've had engineers on the podcast before. So how that kind of like journey begin from studying at university and then wanting to do this?
Well, I think I've always had sort of an entrepreneurial instinct. One of my earliest memories was me and my older brother. We were following my mum and dad around IKEA. I think we must have been about 10 years old, and we were drawing on the back of a napkin this really cool invention where it's basically a drinks machine. We thought it was really unique, but that was we were drawing a business plan and sort of coming up with all of these ideas. So that's sort of my earliest memory of that entrepreneurial mindset that was coming through, and I tried to sell the idea to my friends, and they're having none of it. And then just
What
growing
was
up,
it,
I
like
guess I've
a
always.
vending machine idea?
It wasn't even that, when you go to a cinema and you have the drink dispensers where they just fill up your cup. It was one of
Yeah,
those
yeah.
where essentially it mixes the drinks together, similar to like
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
the big drinks machines in Fives Guys where you can select any drink. So that was sort of my earliest memory. And then growing up, I've always been, I guess, what you class as a hustler. I've always been trying to make money. I got my SIA badge, so I'm licensed to be a bouncer. So did that for a bit of money on the side. I was always looking for an extra opportunity, just something to do. And then onto my engineering
Yeah.
degree, I sort of picked because love maths and physics at school, that typical route, but also love the problem solving aspect. So civil engineering is all about infrastructure. So it's real world problem solving that affects us on a day by day. So sort of that instinct that came in and has developed across my 4 year degree, I think applies directly to building a company, because I'm always looking for that problem and a solution in order to benefit people. So whilst I don't necessarily have the business background, identifying something that can help people is something that I believe comes quite naturally to me. Um, and sort
Yeah,
of
for sure.
the hard work and determination that comes into being an entrepreneur has sort of been developed through sports that I've played, and that journey that I've gone through. So it's sort of a combination of things. It's hard to pinpoint to one area, but that's sort of the overview.
What sports you talk? What sports?
So when I was about 4 to 14 to 10 years, I did karate, Shotokan. So I did that for 10 years, and I got my black belt eventually. And sort of when I got to 14, I was getting quite boisterous, and I was one of the biggest in the year. And in the end, I my friends convinced me to play rugby. I couldn't say no, and kind of had relatively early success with that. I got to play for Leicester Tigers early on, and then went on to Newport Dragons, which is academy in Wales, and then more recently I played semi-professional rugby last year at sort of League Two standard. So I played quite a high level and booked Super Rugby at university, which again is quite a cool level to play, but sort of moving out of that now because of a number of injuries, and kind of doesn't really tie into my long term goals. So
It makes sense. So you have you used to be semi-professional rugby player, black belt in karate, and you also have a bouncer license.
I do. So it's a bit varied, but I just love to get stuck in. So hence,
Yeah, I guess it's very unique. We haven't had someone on the podcast. Yeah, not like that at all. So it's really good to have someone like that. And I remember you told me before that you actually spent some time in Bali working on businesses as well. How did that whole kind of like opportunity come about?
so I guess the start off of that was I completed an industrial placement, which is essentially a year long internship for anyone that doesn't know, between years 2 and 3 of university, and I completed that at an engineering consultancy, um, one of the biggest in the UK, and I was based in Birmingham. And kind of when I was going through that, 90,000 employees, huge company, and I started to realize more and more that sort of the whole corporate life wasn't really for me. Having an engineering background, as I said, I hadn't been exposed too much to business really, but I knew that after being in a company that big, sort of, it was too slow paced for me, and I wanted to get experience working for a fast paced company where I could really, you know, learn that business side and apply it to sort of what I thought I wanted to do in the long term. So I found this program called Start Me Up, which essentially is an unpaid internship in Bali. So I was sort of that determined to not only travel, because I never had a gap year before university, and also get business experience. So I took an unpaid internship out there. For anyone that doesn't know, Bali's got a really big remote working and digital nomad culture. So you get people that go over there, start up businesses, and essentially live in paradise. There's some really cool places over there: Dojo and Ubud co-working spaces in Canggu and Ubud. And essentially, I went out there and worked for a blockchain consultancy, and I was there for about 5 weeks, and then I went to Thailand for 2. So the whole time I was working for a startup, he was based out there. Really cool guy. Went to Eton College, Bristol, and then did a entrepreneurial masters in London at Cass Business School. So got to learn from the experiences he's had while also working live on a company. And they applied blockchain to supply chain management. So again, really different to my engineering degree. But if
Yeah.
anyone's thinking about going to Bali or kind of immersing themselves into that, and I'd saved up across the whole of my placement in order to be able to go and do it. So I was quite fortunate. But it really was cool. You're in paradise. You getting to work on
Yeah, it sounds
businesses.
really cool. I didn't know much about this actually before I spoke to you about, but it seems like there's a big culture of sort of like there's a big crowd of entrepreneurs that go there and run their businesses remotely in these like co-working spaces. So yeah, like would you go back there?
Oh, mate, totally. It's sort of it's hard to describe, but when someone just says the vibe of something is so cool. Like
Yeah, yeah,
in a
yeah.
you're in a co-working space next to someone that trades forex, or you're with someone that's really into the cryptocurrency space, or a life coach. So there's a real mix of people. I mean, one day I was just working in Hubert, and I bumped into Willy Woo, who's like quite a relatively famous Bitcoin trader, and he created this thing called the 200-day rolling average, which, in my opinion, is one of the most proven ways to make money in the short term from Bitcoin. Um, and you just bump into someone like that, but then you might also just spring a conversation with someone that's just come over and wants to start their business. So there's the real range there, and I'd 100% go back. The surfing's really cool there as well. Canggu Beach, just in
Yeah.
front of Old Man's, unreal. Padung Badung Beach as well. It's just a really cool break, and sort of got to express that side of me as well as.
Yeah, exactly. It sounds like a holiday to be honest. It sounds like paradise.
I mean, it was sort of weird, you're knocking out 12, 13, 14 hour days at work, and then you're getting to go out with your friends in the sun and just do it all over again. So yeah, it's a really cool
Yeah,
experience.
definitely. And like, how did you? I know you kind of talked about it a little bit just now, but how did you discover this? Because like, I had no idea this even existed. So how did you find out about the opportunity?
I think I just saw they've got an Instagram page, Start Me Up Careers. So I think it was through there. And I got in contact with them just to find out a bit more. And then there was a girl from Exeter University who had been on it the year before, and I just gave her a call and asked about it. Sounded really cool. Did some research. There's a number of articles about Silicon Bali, as they call it, and it just sort of it seemed like a bit of me. It was so different from what I'd ever done, and I just wanted to throw myself into it. I mean, there's Escape the City, which is a website that's just got remote working jobs and things in different countries that it was also advertised on. That gave me a bit more information. But it was just through Instagram, I believe, to start off
Yeah,
with.
loads of people I reckon listening would be like, that sounds incredible. Are there actually any like downsides to working, in Bali in these places?
I think there's probably two main downsides. First of all, you get people that are there almost like flexing for the Instagram. They're living off maybe the parents'
Oh,
money, and
really?
they're out there pretending that they're running something successful. Um, which is quite
Yeah.
frustrating because it's hard to kind of see through the mist and tell who those people are. I had a conversation where I approached someone and asked them for advice, and kind of 5 minutes in, you could tell that they were just it was yeah they were just flexing that there for the photos. And then probably the second thing is um, people out there can be, I don't know whether volatiles are quite the right word, but they're sort of dreamers and that they can just go off the edge. So the guy that I work for, I haven't spoke to him for probably, well, I think a week after I left. All I know, he could be dead. I've seen um, no like record of him on the internet, any activity. So if I ever have to ask him for a reference for, I don't know where he is. He could be, as I said, he could be dead.
Okay, so it sounds more like you can go there, have a great time, surfing and whatever, but it's kind of like you're working on your startup part time, and it's more of a holiday, right? That's just how it kind of sounds.
Yeah, I think that's how some people treat it. For me, it was very much a work hard, play hard. As I said, I was
Yeah.
doing
Okay.
probably minimum most days 12 hours. One day we did a 22-hour day to deliver something to a client. So
Yeah.
I wasn't like that, but there were certainly people there that were. It just depends what you want to get out of it. For me, I saw the long term benefits that I get from learning and working on a live business, whereas other people saw the partying and
What
the
were the
sun.
long term benefits?
So I guess coming from an engineering background, as I said, I probably didn't know the harsh realities. I'd read books before I went out there. The Lean Startup by Eric Rice, that was really cool and gave me an introduction. But in terms of how when you run a business, you have to do so much testing and validate your assumptions, and I'd never really seen how difficult that can be in real life because the company I was working for was B2B. So in order to validate the assumptions and get feedback from potential customers was really difficult. And especially who I was working for, you kind of having that battle between, you think the business needs to go one way when actually if the founder of a business wants it to go in a direction, even if you think it's wrong, you have to stick with it. Um, and I guess the long term benefits as well, it just sort of helped me realize what I wanted to do. So off the back of it, I realized that I did want to start and operate my own businesses, and I founded my own while I was out there. So that was a SEO consultancy, and essentially I've used my learnings from that and and the books that I'd read to build, model, and test my business model in order to set something up. So that was good fortitude SEO, and I managed to do quite successful off that originally. I went out and lived in Thailand, Chiang Mai, and Bangkok for 2 weeks, and essentially lived off the money that I made from setting that up. So that was really cool. And obviously, running a business at 20, 21 at the time, being an entrepreneur at that age, almost full time, was such a great experience. And what you sort of learn, as I said before, is the harsh reality of it. Went from a huge company where if anything went wrong, I could pass it on to someone above me or ask for help. You don't have that
Yeah.
luxury
Yeah.
when you're running your own business. it's you or nothing. If you don't want to get out of bed, if you don't want to put the graft in, your business is going to fail and you're going to lose that
So you,
investment.
you came back from Bali and Thailand. What was the kind of like next step? Like, what did you go up to after that? Because you obviously came back with a lot of lessons and experiences. It sounds like. So yeah, how did you apply that?
Originally, I came back a bit earlier to play rugby. So
Oh,
I
okay.
was a rugby player at the University of Bath, and sort of my aspirations were to have 1 year left playing high level rugby, and then I'd finish at the end of university. But how it turned out was I broke my ankle at the beginning of September, I believe. So that essentially meant that I've played no rugby this year and just freed up more time to throw towards my business. I was still doing my business on the side, but I just sort of saw it as one last go at a sport that I loved. But when that sort of finished, I then just threw myself full time into it because I had the whole of September to just completely work on originally then Fortitude SEO, and then when my one of my best friends Zach came back, who's now co-founder of Connex, we then came together and started working with another guy on what soon became Connex in order to provide those opportunities, as I said before. So that was sort of how university went, and then my my uni goal is to come out with a first. So that was always my priority, and sort of more and more as traction for Connex has gained momentum. I've started to build that up and commit more time towards that.
Yeah, it must be really tough because, like we mentioned before, you've got events in the UK and you've also got events in the US. Yeah, it's grown quite fast in quite a short space of time. So there's obviously like a demand for this, right?
Yeah, and I think sort of how me and you first met, we through Founders of the Future, the F Factor. We've had some really good advice along the way, which I believe has helped. So for those of you that don't know, the F Factor is essentially you pitch your business. It was the regional final for Bristol, and show how you can solve the UN sustainability goals. So that's how we didn't know each other then, but that's how we first encountered each other, me and Um, Cena and myself, and then essentially feedback. We didn't win off the back of that, but we got some really good feedback, and then also we entered a emerging entrepreneurs competition at Santander University. So those were two really good experiences that we learned a lot from. So I guess that contributed to it, but also got a fantastic team. So there's four of us. There's Zach, Chandler, Kelsey, um, Prudence, and Lewis Everett. So really good team, and we're all kind of. I'm a massive believer that you need to surround people that are better than you, and all three of them, they're so much better than me in many ways, and I
Yeah.
sort of try and emulate what they're achieving and the work that they're putting in. So that's helped, and that's created real synergy. Um,
Yeah,
but
it's the best thing.
also,
The
I've
best
just
thing you
tried
can do.
to.
Sorry, carry on.
No, it's okay. Just kind of take my learning even further. So I completed a set squared business acceleration workshop, which really helped me because, you know, lacking that technical business knowledge, it sort of provided me that how to apply a business model canvas, how to validate your assumptions more thoroughly, how to sort of find the pains of your customers. Those were all things that I didn't really know too much about. And off the back of that, I've been able to apply that to Connect, which I think has really helped our value proposition and sort of our long term goals.
How did you test that there was like a market there?
So essentially, we asked a lot of friends. We went through and we spoke to as many people as we could. Obviously, being a student, we're able to have direct access to peers where we would find out the problems they were having. So we just spoke to as many people as we could. Um, Through rugby, I knew a lot of guys, so I could just speak to them at training and just gather that research that I could then present to the team. Social media is obviously a brilliant thing to use. That we've reached out to people. Group chat is always really good. I'll just if have anything that comes to mind, I'll drop something on there. You might know some better ways to test them on than me, but those are the ways that we sort of showed the best results, to be
Yeah,
honest.
and like I'd love to talk to you about an earlier point that you made about surrounding yourself with good people, and it's not just something that you should utilize in like entrepreneurship, but utilizing it in kind of all aspects of life. Surrounding yourself with positive people, and people that are probably smarter than you are. That does make you a more intelligent, more well-rounded person, and I've that's something that I've learnt within the last sort of year or so, and it's definitely reaped the benefits, and I have become a more well-rounded person. So have you seen the same sort
Yeah,
of effects?
yeah, I completely agree, man. I mean, I'm the first person to put my hand up and say that I'm not talented. I've always had to be the hardest worker in the room to get where I've got. I've
Yeah,
been relatively successful at university and at school, but I was never talented at anything that I did. It was just my discipline and hard work that got me here. So, and one of the things I think that's great with university that maybe isn't so good at school is that you've got the ability to, if you don't want to be involved with someone, if you don't want them to be in your circle, you just don't have to see them again.
yeah.
So, sort of, as soon as I got to uni, I just did my best to surround myself with people that I believed improved me. I got really lucky. So, when I was a fresher at the University of Bath, I had a roommate, which is quite unique. So I was sleeping 2 meters away from another guy, and
Oh, like
he's
the like
now
the
turned out,
American sort of American dorms.
yeah, yeah, exactly like that. And he's turned out to be one of my best friends. And I can honestly say that going to university, meeting him's made it worth it because when you just got someone that will be a friend for life. You know, co-founded Connex with me, and he's going back to Bank of New York actually for his grad scheme, really successful, and I've learned so much from him because obviously he's does his business degree, and I've sort of picked stuff up along the way, sort of as he's gone through his journey. Um, but yeah, in terms of having a circle, I've just always tried to make sure that whoever is within that has qualities that
Yeah.
I want. Um,
What are those qualities?
One thing that I've always tried to work on is empathy, because I've had some feedback when I was on placement that essentially I sometimes didn't show empathy to other people. As I mentioned before, I'm always tried to be the hardest worker, and I think sometimes that can make me quite narrow-minded, and don't necessarily think about how other people may feel. So that's something that I've tried to work on. I created a 90-day learning challenge, and that was actually off the back of going to Bali and the amazing people that I met out there. I realised that I wanted to have a positive impact on people because obviously I'm the average of my five closest people and they're the average of me. So I wanted to really improve my emotional intelligence, and the title of that learning challenge was How to Show Empathy Effectively. So I schooled myself over 90 days in order to kind of develop that intelligence for how I was making people feel. Um,
It takes a lot
and
of discipline to do stuff like that, though. Like I know a lot of people, especially that I know, or I mean, I guess anyone, especially with something is similar to like a New Year's like resolution, isn't it? So I know a lot of people struggle with that sort of thing. So how do you stay so disciplined in stuff like that?
well, it's I think they say 21 days for a habit, 90 for a lifetime. So that was sort of why it was 90 days. But in terms of the discipline aspect, that's something that I've never really lacked. I think it's a really good characteristic that I've taken from my dad and was developed through doing karate. Discipline is one of the most important things that you have to have in order to succeed at that. And then sort of doing maths at A level and then a really hard engineering degree and taking on the things that I've taken on throughout university, disciplines just always come naturally to me. I guess the best way that I kind of stuck to that was just a routine. So I did it first thing in the morning. So just set up my day. And obviously, if you I don't know about your morning routine, but if you kind of stick at it and make sure you're doing the same thing every day, it just sort of becomes you don't even have to think about it. So sticking at it wasn't really kind of difficult. I'll journal in the morning and I'll get up at the same time. So just fitting it in with what I was doing every day helped.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's kind of where we're gonna end the podcast because we're kind of almost over 40 minutes. So really great pleasure talking to you, Henry. It was really great insight into how your company's tackling this whole like students utilizing networking more into their favor, and creating the structure for them to do that is really good, I think. Massive pleasure having you on.
No, thank you, man. And as I've said to you before, I really like what you're doing with your podcast and providing exposure to young entrepreneurs. I think is really powerful, and I know in the long term it will certainly work out.
Thanks a lot. Trying my best. How can people stay in touch with you or Connex events? Just what you're up to.
So in terms of me, the best way to get in contact is through LinkedIn. Just drop me a message on there. I'll get back to you as soon as possible. And then Connex events at connex.events on Instagram. And then the website is just connex.events. So you can browse through the events that we've got available on there, as well as get in contact with the team. And you can find also Zach, Prudence and Lewis on LinkedIn through my network if you want to speak to any of those as well. Cheers, see you. Have a good one, mate. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Millennial Entrepreneur Podcast. If you enjoyed, please be sure to subscribe and to also leave a review. And 5 stars would be amazing. Share it with your friends. Follow us on Instagram. I'll leave the link in the description. And I'll see you in the next episode.